We are here with Lord Coaker. He's a minister of the British government. Thanks, Lord Coaker, to be here with
No, it's,
Athena Lab. It's an honor for us to have you here.
so no, the honour is mine, and it's a privilege to be here in Chile. So my first time in Chile, it's fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So, my first question is about your government. Uh, what are the priorities for the Labour government in terms of defence?
So the first thing to say is we recognise we need to spend more on defence, and we will set out a pathway to reaching 2.5% in the spring at a fiscal event then. So we'll set that. So we recognise the importance of defence, and we're spending more money. We've put £3 billion in next year, and we'll be spending more than that over the next period of time. But in terms of our priorities, alongside that, what we think is important is because of what's happened in Ukraine in particular, but also some of the other challenges that we see across the world, that we need to look at those threats. So we've conducting a defence review where we're looking at the threats that we face and what capabilities we need in order to defend ourselves, not just on our own, but with our friends and allies in Europe and across the world to meet those threats. And you can start to see already what some of that what that means. The new technology that's occurred and seen with the increased use of drones. What does that mean for the future? How do you defend yourself with respect to that? We see the return of state-on-state war, wars that in some ways we thought were a thing of the past, particularly in Europe, where you might need to intervene with failing states or failed states. That's been our priority, but clearly with the Russian illegal invasion of Ukraine, that's completely changed that. So we're looking at what capabilities we need around our army, around our navy, around our air force, but also, as I say, the new and emerging threats from drones. But also then you go into hybrid warfare, the information wars that are taking place, the attacks that we've seen in Ukraine with respect to the Russians and critical national infrastructure. What does that mean for the UK in terms of how the UK prepares itself for any potential threat to our own critical national infrastructure? We see the threats that are taking place with respect to underwater cables. How do we defend ourselves against that? We see the impacts of climate change. We may talk about the Antarctic later, but if you look at the UK and you ask about the UK defence policy, the High North, the Arctic, is opening up in a way that even a few years ago would not have been thought of. So it's the new capabilities that are needed to deal with that, the icebreakers, all of those sorts of things that we need to do, and how we operate in that extreme environment with our friends and colleagues there. And I think the last point to make, which we think is really important as we're sat here in Chile, obviously we have the crisis in Europe with respect to Ukraine, but also we accept the responsibility that the UK has with our friends and allies in other parts of the world as well, in the Indo-Pacific. And we see that indivisibility of challenge, that indivisibility of conflict in one part of the world, in one region, impacts on the other. So what happens in Europe affects the Indo-Pacific. What happens in the Indo-Pacific affects Europe. So our defence policy is going to respond to all that as a consequence of the defence review, which will report in the first half of next year. And then we'll set out how we respond to that and the different capabilities we'll need in order to meet those challenges.
You mentioned many times Ukraine. For the very, very first time, the UK supports Ukraine. I mean, it's awesome what you achieve in Ukraine. But, Governor, are you going to keep the support to Ukraine in the same level? I mean, one of the main issues here in Exponaval is the defense industry.
Yes.
So are you going to keep the support to Ukraine? Because
Well, I think the first thing to say, since we're sat in Chile, that Chile's support around Ukraine has been immense. We're very pleased with that. The humanitarian support, I know that Chile does, has been very, very welcome. But in terms of the UK, we will support Ukraine for as long as it takes. We've said we will provide £3 billion a year for as long as it takes. and that's a really important statement. I met the Ukrainian defence minister last week and repeated that pledge. In terms of where it goes in the future, as I say, we'll support Ukraine until, as I say, it's a matter for them, but we'll support them for however many years it takes. In terms of armaments, I think it's true, and again, the Defence Review is looking at this, that the armaments that we will do all we can, and it's not just the UK, but we will do all we can to provide the equipment and the armaments that Ukraine needs. It has been, again, we're talking about defence industry and thinking about these things. It has been a wake-up call to us in terms of our own defence industry, and we've been talking industries here, talking about exports, but we're also talking about our capacity to build up the level of armaments that we've got, the amount of equipment that we've got, and the stockpiles of weapons that we have. And we have, as one of the first things that we've done, we've set up and reforming within the Ministry of Defence in London is a national armaments director, which will give that the strength of that position to ensure that we have a defence industry which is more capable and more able to build and deliver the weapons that we need and equipment that we need, but more importantly, can accelerate that at a time of crisis, so that we don't have to wait a year or two before industry is actually ready to deliver that amount of equipment or that level of equipment, but can do it much more quickly. And that is what we're doing, and where we will get to.
As you say, then in this globalized world, every theater or scenario is connected to each other. Are you looking what is going on in the South Atlantic? I mean, the Argentinians are trying to rebuild the armed forces, and I think they're interested in to buy submarines, F-16 fighters. Are you worried about that, or do you think this is a natural process for a country?
Look, Argentina is an independent, proud nation, and we look to have good relationships with them. But how Argentina spends its budget and decides what it spends it on is a matter for Argentina. We're increasing our defence spending to 2.5%, as I've said. But as I say, Argentina is a proud nation. They can spend their money and budget in the ways that they determine, and that's a matter for them. We have well-established positions with respect to the South Atlantic, but that doesn't preclude us from wanting a good and relationship with Argentina, and we've made that clear to them, and they will make it clear back to us that, notwithstanding the obvious problem there is, that we can work together. Now, clearly, if we're talking about the Antarctic, it's in all of our interests, Chile and ourselves in particular, to work more closely and to cooperate more with respect to the Antarctic and the challenges that face us there. Part of the reason we're so involved in Ukraine is it's about standing up for the rules-based order. It's about standing up for human rights. It's about standing up for the rule of the law of sea. Those things matter in Ukraine. They matter in the Arctic, but they also matter in the Antarctic and the South Atlantic and beyond. And that's why it's so important with the principles that we're standing for in Ukraine, and they matter across the world.
You had the opportunity to meet with your counterparts here. I mean, Undersecretary Montero and other local authorities. Are you exploring new fields of cooperation between the two countries in terms of defense? Because we have a long history of cooperation between the US and between the UK, and Chile.
Chile and the UK have a really strong and important relationship. We had a very good meeting with the Undersecretary yesterday, and it was we saw him again today, and we saw the Defence Secretary as well opening the opening here today. So that was really good. Now, of course, we had the exercise Unitas. HMS Protector was a part of that. That was a multinational force, naval force, dealing with the potential challenges that it may face at sea and how we would respond to that. And we're certainly looking to look at how we might work even more closely together with respect to particularly with respect to the Navy, but we've also worked with the Chilean Air Force. We provided E-3 Sentry aircraft recently with respect to that. So we have a close relationship. Chile is an independent country, it will make its own decisions, but as always, the alliances that we have, the strength of that cooperation matters, and we will look to work ever more closely with Chile to meet those common objectives.
I read the news that recently basically the Ministry of Defense decided to retire 5 ships. Are there any plans to transfer ships or frigates to Chile for Type 23 frigates?
Well, there's discussions going on about what we may or may not do, what Chile would want to do with respect to the frigates that may become available. That's obviously discussions that's going on, is a matter for them. There's obviously a future frigate programme that we're discussing with them and with others. So we're looking with respect to the frigates at the moment, whether we can help with respect to that programme, but also the future frigate programme that we're developing as well. And certainly that's something Chile will look at. But it's a matter for them, those decisions. But we're very keen to work with them, to cooperate with them, to develop both, to support them with the existing frigate programme that they've got, but also to look to the future with the future frigate programme that we've got around Type 31 and AH-140. We've got we've already in process of building one, is about to go to sea with respect to that. And it may be that would be something Chile could look at in the future as well. But certainly the frigate programme is an example of the sorts of things that we could do as well. But as I say, the maritime environment is in all of our interests to do something about. Chile believes in the rule of the law of the sea, which is what we believe in as well, and together we can protect that.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. No, thank you very much.